broke up with a person, and a few days later, my roommate gave me a note that was on my windshield. The note said, "I would have cleaned your car if you didn't cut me off." The next day, the person I broke up with was at my door, repeatedly ringing my camera doorbell. The person then went to my apartment complex office and told the clerks that they hadn't seen me in weeks and asked if they could be let into my apartment to check on me. The clerks at the office called me and told me everything. They also said that the person waited outside of the apartment complex for a while. He would send me long, rambling text messages nearly every day. They could get very creepy. How I could not deny what was meant to be, that I was already a part of him and that he could already feel my blood coursing through his veins constantly. I took all the professional advice and never one time responded to any of his messages. One autumn evening, however, he let something slip in a particular text message that made me realize that he had been standing outside of my flat on the walkway opposite watching me all that time. I went back and reread some of his messages, and with the benefit of hindsight I could tell that this had been going on for some time. And still not one single fucking thing I could do about it. After all, he hadn't violated any laws, only my sanity, his own dignity, and all manner of human decency. It's funny. Prior to this, I thought stalking was kinda cute. When I was in high school, the mother of a friend of mine became kind of obsessed with me. One time, when I was 16, she told me she needed to talk to me in private, and I assumed it was about my friend, so I met with her, and it turned out that she was looking for a romantic encounter. She told me that her marriage was unhappy, and that she wanted to be with me. I was a dumb kid and had no idea how to handle it, because I didn't want to wreck my friend's family by saying anything. It got to the point where she would drive around my neighborhood in her minivan, looking for me, because she knew I liked to take walks at night. It eventually ended up in a screaming fight between me and her in a huge rainstorm, because she wouldn't leave me alone. That was what finally convinced me I needed help, so I told my parents about it, and it stopped. She eventually ended up divorcing her husband and moving across the country. I never saw her again. I didn't think these incidents were connected until someone else mentioned it, but in late middle school I was sleeping one night and heard someone knocking on my window saying my name, and I just remember waking up telling them to shut up, and then I went back to bed. That following morning I asked my mom why she was knocking on my window, and she was like, "WTF?" I wasn't. Sort of forgot about it. After that I woke up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. It was right next to my bedroom but had to walk into a hallway to get there, and I saw someone standing in our kitchen and they just slowly turned around the left. Thought I was just imagining it and went back to bed. This point I'm like a freshman/JR in high school, and my mom was working nights, so I was home alone, and I was on FaceTime with my friend since I was scared being home alone, and during that call I told them to be quiet because I thought someone was in the house. I looked down the hallway, could see into the kitchen, and as I looked someone was walking out. So I went and locked the door and just went on with my night. I don't even think I told my mom about it. Summer of JR year before I went to my dad's for the summer, my mom thought I pulled a prank on her by hiding her underwear, and I was like, why would I do that? And so I checked my dresser and all my underwear was gone too, so someone broke in while we were sleeping and took our undies. My mom ended up calling the cops and they caught the guy and arrested him. I've mentioned these incidents to a friend before and they were like, dude, it could have been the same guy stalking you, since they knew my name and where my room was located in the house. This was about 10 to 12 years ago. I was a shift leader at a Taco Bell. I was always on the floor with my crew, so I was at the front registers or the drive-through register quite often. I was 24, married, with 2 small children, and I only lived a few streets away from my store. I would often walk to work to save gas. A guy a little older than me started coming in a lot. He was always very friendly, almost too friendly. He'd only come in on my shifts. I started to find out, and then it turned out he was there for every single one of my shifts. I'd told my husband, so I don't think he ever came to our house, but he was a shadow at work. Then, one day, I came in and found him being trained by one of the assistant managers. He tried to get put on my shifts, but I freaked out and immediately went to the office to talk to the store manager. She had no idea about how he'd been in the store all the time. She knew there was a guy, but she didn't know it was him. She was horrified. She promised that she'd keep him away from me until she could get him transferred to another store. She called the store closest while I was standing there and got the transfer. He'd be at our store for that day only, his next day would be at the other store and it would be his home store. She let me take the day off. She called in the other night shift manager. When I came to work the next day, she said that he'd not taken the news well, that he'd have to work at the other store and quit. He came a few more times after that, so I got my husband to sit in the dining room to scare him off. I did not see him again after that. I dated this guy for a few months until I realized he was a narcissistic sociopath. Would you ever cheat on me? If I took your panties for DNA testing, they wouldn't find anything? If you ever cheated on me, I would kill them. While putting on a pair of brass knuckles. I also worked with this psycho and rented a house with him and other dudes we worked with. He would take my phone while I was asleep and read my texts. One time I was driving us somewhere and he threw my car into park and grabbed my phone out of my hand. It was winter. I had wedge boots on, lol. He jumped out of the car and I chased his dumbass down and threw him in a snowbank. He told people at work he slipped on some ice cause he ended up going to the ER. LMAO. After the place we worked opened up a second store, I went to work at that one. He would constantly drive to my side of town and drive past my store. Leave notes on my car. When I went on a Friday night, when I knew he was at work, I went to try to get at least my clothes and shit out of the house. I moved a bunch of heavy shit in front of the bedroom door because I knew he would show up. Sure as shit, not 10 minutes later. He tries to get in the room and is screaming at me. He tried to grab me when I went near the door to keep him out. Then he followed me down the on-ramp to the highway, riding my ass, trying to rear-end me the whole time. Another time he chased me all over town on the highways and shit, going like 70 trying to get away from him. I tried to get 3 restraining orders, but they were all denied. His brother is a county sheriff. Finally got out and ended up moving out of state. I came back a couple years ago and found out he died 6 months before I moved back.